Is that the one that's like a subscription?
You can get a subscription, but you can play it for free. And I've been playing it for free so far because I'm a broke ass bitch. Hence why I haven't.
Because I didn't know if it yeah. Because like I didn't know if it had a free playthrough or not. Yeah. Or like up to a certain point.
Gosh.
Because isn't that how Final Fantasy 14 is? It's like free up to a certain point.
I don't play Final Fantasy, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently
World of Warcraft
for the last 25 seconds.
Seconds.
Cool.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to say 25
minutes.
minutes.
Over to YouTube to tell it to start, and it had already started. So
cool.
Hi.
We are in.
Oh well, in that case, howdy, folks.
Fantastic.
All right.
Okay, so
yeah, we said we were going to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about character
options,
stuff.
Some frequently asked questions. Kian had a thing, but that was 30 minutes ago, and I don't remember what it was. Because
I think it was
technical difficulties.
What system you like to
That was it.
It was like what system you liked and why.
Yeah.
And
we
whatever else
about,
we happened to come across.
Yeah. I know one we wanted to cover was the teleportation spells.
Yes, one of the most interesting questions. I just looked up like DM FAQs, which, by the way, if you just look it up like that, DM FAQs, it brings up a whole bunch of shit about diabetes. But
okay.
When I finally found what I was actually looking for, one of the most interesting questions was, does teleporting via spells like Dimension Door or Misty Step like stop momentum? And I thought it was a cool question. And I'm just going to go ahead and say my piece on it. I think it does. Like the way I read the spell, it says that like you go from one place and then put yourself in another. So if you're like going in momentum and then you're in that one space at the time of you casting the spell, and then you go to another place, I don't think the momentum would carry over.
Yeah. I'll go next. I think it depends on the spell, in my opinion.
Yes. I was talking specifically about Dimension Door.
Yeah, because I was going to say, with Dimension Door, I've seen it flavored as a lot of times as it's removing you from your instance of space and putting you in another one. So the spell is doing the act of moving. But in the case of Misty Step, I think... hold on. Misty Step... No, I'm thinking of Blink. I'm thinking of Blink in this case, but it's like you're just going to a different plane and then reappearing again. So if you did something like Blink where you're moving and then decides to pop you back into the material realm, and that's when the floor gives out, or like if you're moving when it pops you back out, then the momentum carries. But Misty Step, I'll have to look at it because I don't think I've actually read that spell.
It is probably one of the shortest spell descriptions I've ever seen. It says, briefly surrounded by a silvery mist, you teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see.
Yeah, so I feel like if the spell, like with the wording, if it sounds like the spell is the thing doing the moving and not you moving through like a doorway or you moving through a portal of some kind, then it stops your momentum. Yeah, that's my piece.
I don't argue with you people on that one, because your momentum and all the inertia and whatnot in you is not carried in the space around you. It's carried in you. So if you move, your momentum should move with you. And it's whatever direction is relative. Like if you're moving straight forward and you're teleported 3 feet to the right and facing another direction, you should still be moving straight forward because your momentum is based on your movement. And since you teleported, you're still carrying that momentum with you. So directionally, you should still be carrying forward momentum.
Kian, I'm really glad you're here because whenever we make a point, I know you can be a contrarian even if you don't believe in that point. So, like, it'll make for more
in-depth discussion.
More in-depth looks at the conversation. So,
yeah.
And I
Great.
think,
I'm really glad that my argumentative nature is beneficial to you.
mean,
It
it
pisses
really
off
is.
most of my friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
it does to me as well, but like it's good content, so
And I think you could pick either way. You just have to make sure that you pick one and remain consistent with it. You
Yeah.
can't decide
Yeah.
this time teleportation does carry momentum and this time it doesn't. It has to either always carry the momentum or never carry the momentum.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And personally, I go back and forth on this a lot because I have actually
Mhm.
thought about it even before you brought up the question earlier today. And I think I would have to actually agree with Kian that most of the time I would think your momentum would stick with you. Because again, it is your momentum going forward. Now, there are a couple of spells, and I don't remember what they are offhand, that might negate that, because they are very specific in what they're doing. But for the most part, I would think your momentum would carry with you.
Now, I'm going to flex my big brain muscle and I'm going to say that I think it would be at the exact. It's not going to carry over the same way, maybe, if you pull up Discord real quick so I can actually see that I'm talking. All right. I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to carry over the way that it would if you were going straight forward necessarily. Because think of it like a movement, like a function on a graph on a Cartesian plane.
Oh, not more math.
Have you met Kian?
It's don't worry about it.
This is the
It's just
guy
a basic
who did
differential.
actual genetic squares to understand like the breeding patterns of dragons for his world.
You use Punnett squares in your world building?
He did.
I did.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
I can
you
respect
showed
that. I
them
can
to
respect
me.
that.
I know they exist
I
somewhere
did?
in your notes.
not only do you make Punnett squares, but you also have dementia. That's good to know.
Because I remember having that discussion with you and telling you that you were insane.
It's all in the details, man.
I vaguely remember that, but I didn't.
I mean, it is all in the details. But who is going to ask that?
Well, I think you're underestimating the sick brains of D&D players today, Joey.
I mean, I know of one player that might ask that. But
It's Kian.
No. But he is like an actual high school science teacher. And that's the kind of stuff he does actually ask when playing.
Right.
Because he has
So-
asked me some really weird stuff.
Not that most of anyone would know this, but just for my sake, is this Boz?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know of him anyway.
Yeah.
God.
Anyway,
I only
so
met him,
I,
like,
thi-
He would ask those kind of questions.
Yeah,
I
the
think
brief
that's-
time.
I think that segues into a good next topic of conversation. What's the most insane thing that you have done for the sake of world building? Like Kian's is obviously Punnett squares for dragons.
Apparently.
That he doesn't
doing it.
remember doing. Hey, the only reason I remember you doing it is because it was so bizarrely specific
Mm-hmm.
that
I
you felt
think
the need to have that.
it's not so much crazy as it is just time consuming, but with the world I'm currently working on, it's a fresh pantheon. It's
Oh, I did that.
yeah, and it's like I completely just went in and like I have some gods which are like the stand-ins for Tiamat and Bahamut, like the dragon gods.
I kept those two just because.
Yeah, like I brought them in, but they have a different kind of origin compared to the other main gods, and it takes a lot of, at least pantheon-wise, a lot of inspiration from like the Greek pantheon. So it's very, these gods like to make trouble.
Yeah, naturally, because
Yeah.
Greek pantheon is
They were up and down. They were
I
on
think
one
unquestionably the Greek pantheon is one of the most interesting. Like,
Yeah.
it's the one most people know stories about.
Yeah, and whatever part Percy Jackson played into that too.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely where my initial kind of world building introduction to pantheons came in, was through Rick Riordan.
Fun fact: Percy Jackson and the Olympians is the only book series I have read 100% through, like to completion.
Did you do the books that came after, or just the Percy Jackson book?
I tried reading The Lost Hero. I only made it through the first one.
I got through all of that second series.
I'm not a big reader. Like, I can't. I will sit there, read a page, forget what I just read, and have to read it all over again. I prefer audiobooks or comics.
I mean, fair
I
enough.
love comics and I don't mind audiobooks, but I'm kind of disappointed in you. Like, at the very least, listen to audiobooks of a series.
I'm not a big fan of audiobooks personally, because
a lot of people hate them, and I'm like, they are so much better for me.
I don't hate them. It's just that usually if I'm listening to something, I'll start to zone out, and I don't have a visual representation of me realizing, oh, I just glanced over this entire page instead of actually reading it. So if I missed like 10 minutes of book, I'm not going to remember, because there's nothing for me to realize it.
And I'm always like, yeah, I would write a book, and then I'm like, wait, that makes no sense. I don't read. Why should I write? But
Writing and reading are two very different skills.
yeah, but like,
You do have to proofread your work.
yeah, that they always say, if you want to be good at writing, you got to read a lot and you got to write a lot.
You not necessarily. It's more, I think, about absorbing a story and getting the idea.
How many bestsellers have you sold, Kian?
I did not say that I am an expert. I just said this is my own opinion. You can fight me.
You could fight Stephen King, because that's who I'm quoting right now.
Right,
no, but you're the one quoting him, so you can fight me.
Parker, what was your most extreme thing you've done for campaign building?
Oh,
world building.
Yeah, mine's not like too terrible. No, it's kind of crazy. So, I wanted to, like, every time I made a map of like my main campaign setting, the little section of the world that I use as my little playground and stuff, I always kept wanting to add more and more details. And so I said, fuck it, why don't I just make like a really big map? And then I realized I didn't have paper that big. So I took a fat stack of gridded paper, like gridded paper that you do for like math and stuff, that has like 1 centimeter grid and stuff, and just like laid it out on the floor, and then made like a map where a single square or hex or whatever you want to call it on the grid was 1 mile of my campaign setting. And then just I think I have a picture of it somewhere, and if I do, I'm going to show it to you guys. But basically, I drew a map with all like the roads, a bunch of locations of a bunch of dungeons. I didn't finish it, but I was going to, and I was going to hang it up, and it was going to be massive. But it was the biggest waste of time, because you don't need that much. You don't need that much for a game. And I am pretty sure I still have it somewhere in my camera roll. But like, it is definitely the most work I put into something that was totally unnecessary. But it was kind of really fun. So
I was going to say, for my map, I ended up just doodling it on a whiteboard. Mm-hmm. And then I took a picture of that, put it on, like, I took one of my drawing softwares, and I just kind of lowered the opacity, sketched over it, printed that out, then hand drew the actual outline with more detail that I wanted, and then put that drawing back into the drawing software and did all the extra details that I have at the moment.
Oh, it might be on Snapchat. That might be a thing. Might be my snaps.
Is definitely a thing.
I would share the file with you guys, but it's too powerful for Discord, and I'm not paying for Nitro.
That's fair. I understand that completely.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think
okay.
Mine would have to be accidentally, without realizing it, force myself to write about 40,000 years worth of history.
Yeah, but did you really write like in-depth accounts of all these, or just like general ideas?
Some of it, yes. I know you've seen the general timeline. Some of that stuff has
Yes,
been fully fleshed out. Some of it hasn't, and I keep adding.
Yeah,
more
which
to
I
it because
did not
it's-
know.
But yeah, I
Like you
keep
sent me the
adding more to
timeline,
it.
and I'm like, which of these events, like it said like the Spy Wars or something. I'm like, that's interesting. What the fuck is that? Because there's like no link here.
Yeah, that is the current events in my campaign setting is the Spy War, and that is the term basically given to the current Cold War settings of what's happening in the overall world. It may or may not affect players ever, depending on how involved they get in political nonsense.
I'm not good at coming up with political nonsense, so I try to make D&D my games more just of the
Adventures.
standard shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
the standard
Quest
shit.
adventure.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, I don't have a lot for political planned out at the moment because the one place that would have the most political issues is like still under development. But for me, it's like I start with like the basic idea of a conflict and how I want it to go, and then I work on the key characters or the key NPCs that are going to be involved, figure out what their thing is,
Right.
and then just kind of work around those characters' interactions in it. And then I figure out the consequences of countries later down. I think that makes sense.
I don't have an issue doing political stuff. I mean, I do. It's not too difficult, but I do not enjoy it. I think it is boring as hell. And I don't think it's fun to run. So I usually say, there's a political issue going on. Please don't worry about it because I don't want to run that. And usually my players respect that because I don't think they're too interested in getting into it either.
Yeah.
They're more interested in questing
Yeah.
anyway.
That type of game requires very specific players to have a lot of buy-in. You don't really
Yeah.
want to try and run politics without having players that really want to do something like that. Because otherwise,
Okay.
it's going to be terrible for everyone.
Yeah, I found a picture that I took. So these are all 8 by 11 inch sheets of graph paper laid out on my basement floor with patches missing. I didn't take a picture of the like finished. I never truly finished it, but like finished product. But I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. But
Oh Lord,
that's
I can
what
see
they-
the outline of it. I can see where the
Yeah.
shapes are. Yeah,
There's no detail, but definitely.
Yeah,
and that's
the picture you can't even see really the details
Yeah.
because I took it with a shitty camera. But like all those little squares and stuff are 8 by 11 inch sheets of paper. So this was like
a lot.
that's like 4 by 5 feet.
And you said, is that like a whole world or is that just a dungeon?
No, it was one country of my
Okay.
world, like the one that you guys play on currently.
Yeah, that makes sense with how detailed the map you gave us is.
Yeah.
And the map I gave you guys isn't even the master map.
That's a lot to fit on there.
Yeah, like well, now that I gave you guys the link to my World Anvil page, you guys can see like the master map, but like who cares? I just trust that you guys will have that information, but your characters will not. So
And we know the difference.
what the fuck is Terry talking about?
I don't know.
I think he's trying to get the music. I think Terry's trying to get the music bot to play. More.
But yeah, I was gonna say for the politics in my world, it's less for if the players want to get involved in politics. It's more for giving motivation to NPCs that they'll have to encounter if they want to go this way.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah.
I would say that's really why I designed it too. It's obviously they can get involved and cause tremendous amounts of harm because I know my players and good is not going to come out of it.
Yeah. I remember in one of my sessions, I had like a town crier shouting something like, the king has died in his sleep. The king has died in his sleep. And all the players are like, who gives a fuck? Let's go slay Gorgons, okay? Like, who cares about the king?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
we should care about this. And they're like, no, we don't care. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Less work for me.
The politics for me is more it's details for NPCs, and it's to give off like the general vibe of certain. They're called domains in my world, but they're countries. Certain countries. So if there's like one country and another country having a border dispute, then depending on which country they go to first or how they cross may add encounters or give them trouble depending on how they interact with it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I just
none
did
of
it
my
to
players
make
ever
the
did.
world feel more alive, because without some kind of gears moving in the background, it's just whatever
Yeah.
the players are doing.
Because if it's mostly a player-driven world, then sometimes the stuff in the background can kind of just stop existing if they go certain places. So it's always good to have at least something going in the background in the world that's not focused on the players.
One thing I'm starting to get better at is like when you guys in game decide not to take a particular quest or something, or don't finish a quest or fail a quest even, the consequences of that will show later. Like I had other stuff in Frost Hearth prepared in case you guys wanted to do it, and since you guys left and didn't do it, that means that that stuff is still going to happen just without you there to stop it.
Yeah.
So like when you guys go to Frost Hearth next, it could be totally different place, and it's just because you guys like didn't take this one quest or didn't help this one NPC or something like that, which I think is a really good way to like make the world feel like it's existing even without you guys there.
The world goes on without your interaction, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of like.
I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that seems like a real missed opportunity in video games. Like you could just have a world clock, and when you trigger an event that gives you a quest, if you disregard that quest, suddenly the quest happens elsewhere.
And
Yeah.
It's not totally
some
impossible.
Games actually do that, because Fable 2.
I've been
does
designing
that.
video games. I've been designing video games for like a semester now, and just thinking about how that like coding would go down just makes my brain melt. So
that's why I think most games, like video games, don't do it, is because it would be a pain to actually make it happen.
It's such a pain.
Yeah.
Like, just making like dialogue trees is the most tedious
We're talking
bullshit.
about a pen and paper game, and it's a pain for
so much
us.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much
And
easier.
ours
Though.
just is
like
in a
you don't have to make a
notebook.
computer.
Yeah.
We know how our minds work. We can't tell a computer how to, behave like our minds do.
Or how to justify this character doing that outside of physically telling them if the player does not complete X, Y, Z, A, B, C, then this NPC will do things 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And it's like
that was like a poem.
I once I hit X, Y, and Z, I wanted to keep going.
I really think you missed your calling there. I don't know what you're majoring in, but if it's not creative writing, you missed your calling.
I would love to do that, but I need to afford medication.
That's fair. I wanted to minor in creative writing, but then I realized that I don't even think I'm handling well, that's not true. I'm doing pretty good in school considering, COVID and shit. But like I don't think I can mentally handle taking a minor, but I'm majoring in game design, which right now is mostly just learning, video game stuff, but I'm probably going to focus more on pen and paper stuff because ideally what I want to end up doing is being on the creative team for like D&D or Magic at Wizards of the Coast, if that even exists by the time I graduate.
Oh,
I think it probably will.
I don't know why it wouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't know why it wouldn't. But like, no, I'm not even saying that. But like, it used to belong to like TSR and stuff. Which does it still technically?
No, TSR doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
it's just
not a thing anymore.
I'm sure I should know that, because of my major. But I think I told you this, but it's still cool. So did I tell you guys how I met Tim Kask?
No, actually, I don't think you did.
I don't think
All
you
right,
did.
so Tim Kask is one of the original playtesters and editors for all the old TSR products, and is like the reason like psionics exist in D&D. And I didn't meet him face to face, but like we got to like hop in a Zoom call with the guy for one of my classes, and it was really cool. He's like this really old Wisconsin dude with like a hat and a vape pen, and like all he does is just talk about games he plays in now. He doesn't
That's
even
awesome.
make games anymore. He
That
sounds like he's living the life.
living the life.
Yeah, he has this like web series that he does, and it's hilarious and it's really heartwarming because he's just like this really old guy who doesn't really understand technology all that well, making a web series. It's called like Curmudgeon in the Cellar or something, and it's just him talking about his experience in tabletop, and it was an experience. And like, I don't know, he's like one of like the last OGs from Dungeons and Dragons is like Genesis, because like Gygax is dead, Arneson's dead, I think.
No, I don't think Arneson's dead yet.
Oh, really?
Probably
Well,
close.
I have to
He's
Google
probably
that.
on the verge, but I don't think he's dead yet. I might be eating my words.
No, if I could minor in creative writing, I would love to, honestly, like
Oh, no,
as
good.
a passion. But like,
Mhm.
speaking as far as scheduling and money, I don't think I could.
Arneson died in 2009.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought he didn't die. I'm eating my words now. I was very wrong.
He died a year after our boy Gary Gygax. Which,
Yeah.
like, Gary Gygax was cool, but like it's come to light that he had a lot of really weird opinions about D&D, which is, well, he created the game, obviously, but like a lot of people are like, yeah, no, that's bullshit. We don't have to listen to that, which is true. Like, he made it for people to like, make it their own and stuff. But like, a lot of people are just like, no, that's wrong. It doesn't matter that he wrote it.
I know the channel XP to level 3 did it's like the hardest module that ever came out. It's the Tomb of Annihilation, right?
No, that's
No.
that's a 5e adventure.
You're
You're talking about the
the,
Tomb of
We'll talk
Tomb of
about
Horrors.
Tomb of Horrors. And I remember he was talking about how like the back in first edition, the kind of general vibe for games wasn't so much the role play as it was just churning out characters and going through modules. It was
dungeon crawling.
yeah, just dungeon crawling. And so
trying to get as much loot as possible and survive as long as you could.
yeah, it was very much more focused on that game aspect, and how over time it became like it's still prevalent, but like now there are some games that barely do combat, and it's mostly role playing with the system.
Yeah. I've never been in one of those personally. Like, I've been in more RP heavy games. Have I even?
I know. I was gonna say I have, but that's just because the I guess conflict we were in was a lot more mystery setting, so we had to find clues and talk to people and figure stuff out. And there was only like a total of 3 combat instances across like 8 or 9 sessions.
Yeah. Did you guys see that Wizards is releasing a new book called like Candlelight or like Candlelight Mysteries or something?
It's gonna be,
Just a bunch of like
be,
modular adventures.
Yeah, it's gonna be similar to like the Tales from the.
It seems similar to Ghost or like Ghosts of Saltmarsh,
where it's gonna be a bunch of small sections that you could string together, but they're not really designed to be run that way.
Yeah. I've only run one like mystery for a part of my game, and it's where, so you guys know the city you guys are heading to in my campaign, Forge Raid, the one that's floating?
Yeah.
Well, my players went there like a year or 2 ago, and God, that was a fun campaign. But they got there and were like, holy shit, it's a floating city. And they got up there, and then they realized that there's like this crime family that's like running shit and whatnot. And they also realized that people were disappearing, and they thought it was part of the crime family, but then they realized that at the scene of every crime, there's like stone dust and stuff, and like they eventually figured out that it was Medusa's like doing their nasty business out of a like house in the slums, and that's the only thing close enough to like a mystery, and it actually worked really well, and I'm like kind of proud of myself for writing it. But I did it totally by accident, and it was great.
I've run 2 mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
One was a legit like murder mystery, whodunit, track down the bad guy and catch him. The only real combat they had
Clue,
was
but
actually
D&D.
fighting the bad guy.
Right.
The second one was the mystery of some disappearing kids, and they go through the whole thing. The best part of that was it was a bunch of their first time playing D&D, have never played before, and one of them, who decided to play a cleric, decides essentially to threaten like 2 6-year-olds because apparently that was the thing he thought would be intelligent to get him information. I think he made a couple of little kids cry. Like, and then he felt really bad afterwards because he's like, wait, I'm supposed to be playing like a man of God character. Did I just traumatize 2 children?
Oh, I know.
His girlfriend and all the other players were like, "Yeah, you did, bud."
Congratulations.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just remembered there was another one shot that same person who did the mystery adventure was it was kind of not the best I could say. It was kind of like Clue, but instead of the murder already been done, we were trying to prevent the murder. So it was like the coronation of the crown prince. It was like he was accepting his as heir to the throne, and there had been a threat on his life. So my character was the captain of the guard, and it was like the king, the queen, the captain of the guard, and my second in the command knew about the threat, but no one else did. So like, and each other player had different roles throughout the night and different objectives to complete. So my objective was to protect the prince at all costs. And we had another person whose goal was to steal a certain bit of jewelry off the prince himself. An ambassador was there who was meant to gain more political power by the end of the night, rather through blackmail or through just talking to the right people. And it only had like two or three turns of combat because my character saw what turned out to be a succubus going in and trying to steal the prince's soul through a kiss, and he just like vaulted off a balcony, flawlessly combat rolled, and just tackled her, and then had her grappled and proned as a fighter for the next 3 rounds of combat.
Nice.
And we took out the succubus fast, and there was like some smaller imps that came in, and it's just taken out.
That might be the most like stereotypical guard / police officer Secret Service type thing that I've ever heard described.
I mean, it's effective.
I mean, because what was happening was the pieces were coming together in the guard's head, like, okay, I think this is how they're going to do it. And as he's walking back to alert his second in the commands of, like, be on alert for these things, specifically, he looks down to the ballroom floor and sees the prince about to dance with this lady, and then they go for a kiss, and the DM described it for her in their words, described it as you see his life energy start to be sucked from him. And I'm like, does that mean my character can physically see energy like radiating off of them? And they're like, yes. And so I'm like, vaulting in, just trucked. They felt guilty because they were responsible for my first ever character death a few months prior. So they're like, maybe we'll tone back the combat just a little bit, and then we just wipe the floor with them.
Okay, if we're on the character deaths now.
Well, it was my first one, all right? And it was a roleplay heavy session, so I felt it.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't say you should
I was playing
feel
this.
They felt guilty too, so.
There's nothing inherently wrong with characters dying unless, the DM's an asshole and, tries to kill your character on purpose.
No, it was an unfortunate nat 20.
Horrors, in which case their job is to try and kill your characters.
Yeah.
I really want to try and run, some of the, 5th edition modules. I've run Dragon of Icespire Peak. I tried running...
I think y'all froze. Y'all did freeze. At least on my screen. I don't know if y'all can hear me. Yay! Technical difficulties. Hang on.
Like these starter kits and essential kits,
Mhm.
just because it's a nice holdover kind of from the first edition, where they sell D&D in these boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In these
I
box sets,
own
willingly.
Curse of Strahd, but I haven't run it yet. I think my first game that will be in person in a while will be Curse of Strahd, hopefully, because
I've heard a lot of good things about Curse of Strahd.
so I'm really attached to Strahd for a really weird reason. Because when I first wanted to get into D&D, I asked. I naively thought it was a single game that you could just buy and open fucking Monopoly or whatever. So I told my grandma to get it for me for my birthday.
A version of that.
No, that's where my story's going. I asked if she could buy D&D for me. And I'm like, hey, for my birthday, can you get me D&D? And she's like, yeah, I'll get you a little D&D as a snack. And bought me the not the video games, the board games that they had out based on the logo. I think it's from 4th edition. I have them lying around somewhere. But the Castle Ravenloft Dungeons and Dragons board game, I thought that's what D&D was until I realized it was much different, and that these were just board games that were sort of 4th edition D&D, where they tried to make it more similar to a video game. And the first one I got was Castle Ravenloft, and it's where I learned who Count Strahd von Zarovich was. It's where I learned about Castle Ravenloft. It was a very horror-esque setting, and I thought it was really cool. Then I got Legend of Drizzt, which is how I know who Drizzt Do'Urden is. And those two characters in particular, along with Archon, the Dragonborn, not Archon. Archon the Cruel is Joe Manganiello's character. Arhan, the Dragonborn fighter, is a character in a lot of the old D&D novels and stuff. And those three characters are I'm very, attached to, because that's how I started D&D and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So we answered one question and then
I,
went on a
I
really
think
long
we got
tangent.
through 2,
No,
didn't we?
did
We got
2.
through.
What
Yeah,
was the second one?
because we got teleportation, and then the first one was craziest thing we've done
Yep.
Awesome.
as world building.
Well, we
That
said
one
we were
wasn't
going to
even
talk about
on my
character
list.
options, so we should probably actually do that.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a list right here. Are there any racial restrictions on classes? The obvious answer is no, but like, do you guys have any in games that you run?
Yes, actually. I have in my campaign setting, because it doesn't make sense for the way I built the setting, several races that are incapable of, say, magic, hypothetically. I think it is the elves, actually, who cannot cast spells.
Wow,
I have
bucking the trend by like a country mile.
Oh, yeah. I have it set very strangely. First off, elves. When I say elves, I mean drow. They're the only elves in my setting.
That's really weird.
Yeah, I was going for weird. I wanted it to stand out as not just ripping off Tolkien. So there are no regular elves, just drow. And I don't think, to my memory, I don't have them doing any magic ever. I think they're like biologically incapable.
That's interesting. You didn't even buck the trend. You said fuck the trend and then tossed it out.
That's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I know in my world that I'm working on, I think it would come down to like very niche, very specific instances, like depending on character backstory. Like, obviously, I'm not going to let you play an artificer if you've never even like if you live in a part of the world that is like on the polar opposite of where the dwarves are, because like the dwarves in my world would be the only group of people that would be even close to the understanding of magic infused with technology.
Yeah.
So like but that's more for specifics of backstory. Other than that, I think that any class can go with any race as long as you're willing to put the effort into, at least try to explain it.
I could be misremembering, but Joey, back when I worked at camp, I believe you discussed something with me about like a homebrew class you were doing called like a brawler or something that was like
Mechanist.
very dwarf specific. Mechanist.
Ooh.
Yes. Did you ever finish that, or did you just scrap the idea?
I haven't scrapped the idea, but I have not finished that because I got started working on something for the campaign that I was actually running, and that got put on a back burner. But mechanists, there aren't any non-dwarf mechanists, really, unless they were raised in... I'd have to look up the name. The Dwarf Nation, essentially.
Well, I need to look up the name. That's the name right there.
It's not.
Dwarf Nation.
I just remember vaguely, I think it starts with a T.
Yeah.
And is next to Volradine and the Scaled Empire.
So you remember the name of the weird place next to it?
Yeah. I remember the
So, like,
weird snake people land and the Dragonborn land, but I cannot remember the name for the Dwarf Kingdom.
I was gonna say Snake People Land. Is that what Boz's character was for that one villain run we did years ago? Yeah. God, that was so much fun. Like, it only lasted
My
3
version
sessions, but it was
of Beyond T.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're the only ones I think I have any full restriction on is the mechanists. There's a partial restriction on gunslingers is you would have to be part of somewhere that you would have access to that knowledge, because guns are still...
Yeah.
Most of the world relies on magic, so guns are kind of a niche use.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most people
I know
prefer their artillery in terms of magic bows or just straight up war wizards.
I know the one time I played Artificer, and I love the class as a concept just because I study engineering, so I really like the concept of it.
I
But
totally forget that you're an engineering major.
you know, it surprises a lot. No, it surprises a lot of people when I talk about all of my interests. But it was less of a like, you know, steampunk-esque. It was more my character grew up with one parent who was really in tune with magic, and then another parent who was literally the town mechanic. So he just learned how to fuse the two together. Like he had they were metal plated gauntlets with little parts that would pop out, and that's where he would channel his magic through, instead of more like reflavoring the entire spell around one gadget.
Right.
It was more he was just channeling his raw magic like influence, and then the gadget did the rest. You know, turning it into that firebolt or fairy fire.
Yeah,
Stuff like that.
On the topic of artificers, my girlfriend, who isn't really like, she loves D&D, but just isn't particularly like comfortable with role playing most of the time.
Mhm.
Which, like, I understand. But she comes with some of the best ideas, and when I told her about artificers, she's like, "That sounds a lot like Honey Lemon from Big Hero 6," and I'm like,
I mean, yeah.
"Damn you right, damn you right."
Honey Lemon is basically an artificer.
Yeah.
And so when we were rolling characters for our impending Curse of Strahd game, she made a furball dude who is basically just Honey Lemon from Big Hero 6, and it is
Honey Lemon the furball.
really cool.
Yay! I like that.
I don't remember the name. I don't think she's named. This particular character is a guy, which I have made one character so far who is gender swapped, but I've never played as them.
I had to. It was for a Halloween one shot, and we had the characters given to us. I make characters just out of concept first, and then I make stats. So a lot of the time, a lot of the characters I have in the backlog vary in presentation or identity, and but I had a female character assigned to me once, and this Halloween one shot was very much I can't remember the name of it, but it's another D&D show. It's something high school. I don't know, but
is it Fantasy High School by Dimension 20?
Yeah, it was kind of like that, where it was like high school students dropped into a sticky situation that allowed them to use magic temporarily, and my character was like that one wolf girl you knew in high school.
Oh,
and I took the character in stride, and that was a lot of fun to play. But as far as other characters, I just go with concept, and if it's cool, I don't care what I got to do to roleplay it. It's just a lot of fun.
So back on the topic of racial restrictions, there we go. I keep adjusting myself because I can't find a way to get comfortable and make it where the camera isn't just staring up my chin the entire time because I don't have a desk currently. But
oh well.
Anyway, my friend Chase, you guys didn't really get a chance to meet him, who was going to be in our game, might be joining us back again soon. Stay tuned. But he wanted to play a turtle man. And I said, "Oh, that's fine." And then we were talking about being a barbarian, and then I was just listing through all the ones that I knew about, like all the subclasses. And then I mentioned the Battle Rager, and he's like, "That sounds dope. What's that?" And I said, "It's something from Wizards of the Coast. It's basically where you wear spiked armor and shit." And he's like, "Ooh, I could be like a spiked snapping turtle." And I'm like, "It says dwarf specific, but fuck that." And he's like, "My character could be raised by dwarves." And I'm like, "Okay, easy backstory." And so, basically, just made out that character.
And I definitely threw out a lot of those kind of restrictions because I would rather people play characters that are interesting, that they want to play. Because, like, for example, my dwarves have a huge stigma against magic. They're not incapable of magic, but because of
they just don't like to use it.
a lot of bad history with one of the neighboring nations that is a magocracy. They have a huge stigma against magic, as it is evil because the nation was really bad to them for years and years and years.
Mm.
But you could play a dwarven wizard. Other dwarves are just gonna basically
Hate
they're
you.
not gonna treat you like you have the plague. Chances are they're
gonna treat you like that, like you have the cheese touch.
It,
Or is it going to be like, it's like you're the only person wearing a mask in an entire anti-masker town?
kind
Is
of.
it going to be like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to bring it to with the times.
They're gonna
I live in Iowa. What are you talking about?
They're gonna give you an awful lot of space, and there's gonna be some that are very sympathetic and some that don't want to talk to you.
Okay, so not anti-maskers, because they would not give you space.
Yeah. No.
No.
I
knew
now
where
he's gone.
where he was coming from. And that
A more accurate one would be an anti-masker in, somewhere in Illinois where masks are the standard.
yeah, probably.
So Chicago, maybe.
I don't know how Chicago's doing. It's a big city. I assume it's just kind of shitting itself. But yeah, maybe.
Chicago,
I
I think
really,
is
I really
own
hate
city
Chicago,
state.
guys. I hate Chicago, so I'm always it's
Most of
such
Chicago
a terrible
is
city.
Chicago.
Yeah.
I've lived in Illinois my entire life, and I've never even been to Chicago.
You're one of the few, I think.
You're not missing a whole lot. The best.
I've
part
been
is
in
a couple of
spitting
the restaurants.
distance. I've been in spitting distance multiple times.
Have you been in
I've never-
Chicago suburbia?
All right.
I've been.
Enough
Charles
of ripping
Township.
on Chicago.
It already gets
They
enough.
need to hear this, Joey.
No, Chicago already knows.
That's fair.
Listen, they can
What's
know,
our
but they
next,
cannot
character
know
question,
enough.
Parker?
Let's see here. Let's find a good one because it might be our last one. At least
Here's
for
one
me,
that you mentioned earlier.
because I
You
work.
mentioned,
Yeah.
is
I
there
also
any
have to
reason
work
why?
tomorrow.
Yeah, well, your
As
work
much
can go
as I
suck a
wish
dick.
this qualified as work, it unfortunately doesn't because I don't get paid for it.
No, you mentioned earlier, Parker. Should paladins be required to be lawful good? And
Yeah.
the obvious answer was no.
Yeah, obviously.
Which I
there's
agree
paladins.
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even outside of Oathbreaker, yeah, there's definitely other paladins who can be different alignments.
Vengeance is one of the quick ones that springs to mind. You don't have to have any particular alignment to feel the need to avenge things, which is really what
or
it is.
get vengeance.
Or
yeah,
crown, I think, is another oath. And it's
yeah, you can
all
definitely be a
about
corrupt
serving
paladin.
your king or emperor or whatever. That
Yeah,
Even outside the subclasses, I'd argue it doesn't make sense for them to be exclusively lawful good.
it doesn't.
Like if you think it's paladins are based on like kind of like a crusader. You're a knight whose job is to go around and spread your religion. In layman's terms, that doesn't mean you're a good person.
yeah, and like the same could go for clerics too, because like clerics, when you hear the word cleric, initially
Everyone
like,
thinks Goody Two Shoes type character, just like
Yeah,
they do with paladins.
there's
Lawful
literally
good does
war,
not mean lawful nice.
yeah, there's literally war domain clerics. So like,
Oh, they're the best domain besides like, I don't know, light domain.
I really want to try the Twilight domain that came out in Tasha's.
Yes.
That sounds cool to me.
Twilight Domain.
I really want to try that.
I'm a big fan of the Grave Domain, personally.
Grave clerics.
I like Grave
They're
clerics.
just don't they have the ability that just like if they're within 30 feet and you can
Yeah.
see it, you can cancel a crit.
Yep.
Guys, I have a quick story about grave clerics. So my awesome girlfriend and I were playing in a Tomb of Annihilation game, not Tomb of Horrors, Tomb of Annihilation. We were in the jungle of Cholt, and I was knocked unconscious by some lizard men, I think. And her character, named Penelope, is a turtle grave cleric whose whole thing is the way that she shows mercy is by by putting like things that are in pain out of their misery by killing them.
Way of the Mercy Monk.
Yeah, she's doing what she thinks is the appropriate thing. What her god is her god's just asking for bodies, and she's giving giving her god bodies in the form of killing.
Your suffering is over.
Yeah, your suffering is over. So my character almost died. Like I was unconscious, and then she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna attack his character," and I'm like, "What? Why?" And she's like, "Because my character puts things that are in misery out of their misery, and you look like you're pretty fucked." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair, but hey, I managed to survive, and it's because I forgot I had bardic inspiration, and my DM reminded me."
It's great. Those are great character moments. The first time.
The first time. After that, we decided, hey. Yeah. Don't be evil. And she's like, I didn't know it was evil. And we're like, yeah, it's pretty bad.
As long as you explain it in character, you can do it to other people, just not this group.
Coincidentally, I know a certain lizard man in a game that I play in who has had a similar conversation, but about eating people. And that conversation essentially ended up being with, if it talks, well, you're with us, no eating it. Why?
That's fair.
Because that's really weird.
Man, lizard men have the hardest time in campaigns. Like, my friend Carter was playing a lizard folk barbarian who was like, you know, like from an old water tribe or something. And he doesn't understand the ways of normal people. And it was very good for the player because the player also doesn't understand the ways of normal people. So he went into a temple to like, I think it was to Bahamut, and went to like one of the paladins praying there or something. And like, I don't know what he asked him for. Anyway, he ended up pissing him off and got kicked out of the church. And they're like, yo, don't come into this church again because you are fucking out of control. And then everybody was like getting done shopping and they all went back. They're like, what happened? He's like, I got kicked out of the church. And they said, we've been gone 5 minutes. What did you do? And he's like, I pissed off the church.
Hey,
managed to do that
doesn't compare to the that doesn't compare to the half orc that ate off some goblins' heads.
I know. I was running something for my brothers, my younger brothers, because they're interested in D&D. They've seen the Crap Guide to D&D by Joe Cat, and I talk about it a lot, so they're interested. And I was running it, and I was like, yeah, you can choose these characters helping out. One of them ended up being a fire genasi, the other one a blue tiefling. And so they're fighting these, I think I had them fighting gnolls that were attacking their village. And one of them, I'm like, now guys, remember, this is a farming village in the middle of a big plain. There's lots of dry things around. And I point to my brother who has the fire genasi. You grew up here. So your character knows to be careful with his fire powers, And the first thing he did in combat was miss with a firebolt. and I'm like, I'm gonna give and it was like, Snow, roll. I need you to roll a d6. If it's above 3, it doesn't catch. And he rolled it. I'm like, now I'm gonna remind you again. You're in the middle of a very dry place. Please be careful.
So,
and it was fine the rest of the night.
That just reminded me. In the game that I do play in, Firebolt is one of my favorite spells. along with Eldritch Blast.
It is a really nice
because
one.
I play a warlock.
Both good. Both good.
But I very rarely actually target creatures with Firebolt. I just use it to light things on fire.
As you do.
I have lit trees on fire because we have a character that doesn't have night vision. And that was my response, was to just light the tree that the enemies were all hiding under on fire.
Hey, it works!
Now the person without night vision can see, and they're all dead.
Exactly.
They're warned for the rest of their life.
And I didn't know where exactly they were, but I knew what bushes they were in, and I just lit the bushes on fire. Like,
you're like,
very
hey,
rarely
I
has
use
this
Firebolt
spell
to light the
actually
trees
been
on fire.
used how it's intended.
You just say, hey, I want to use Firebolt to set the trees on fire. And then he's like, hey, Barbarian, did you hear that? And he's like, yep, I'm already looking up the rules for shoving.
Very much my Dungeon Master's pain in the ass. Because he already knows that I am a Game Master, Dungeon Master, and know like half the monster's stats and how these spells and everything work. I come up with ridiculous nonsense of how to use them, which is completely in character for my Tabaxi Warlock anyway, to very much think out of the box weird tactics. For instance, just in the game last time we played, we're basically playing through Home Alone for Christmas. So
okay,
we are the we're the bandits.
Hey, it's funny because your name's McAllister.
Yeah, and Kevin is the dead kobold that I used as a shield.
Oh,
because
for 11 days.
Well, literally like half the rooms we'd gone through had been trapped. So before I opened the door, I just picked up the kobold that was standing in front of it, held it in front of me, and opened the door.
All right, I got an important question for you, though. Were you playing as the wet bandits or as the sticky bandits?
At this point, probably the murderous bandits, because I don't think anything has survived us.
The normal bandits, where they kill things and pillage.
One of the characters is definitely the sticky bandit on the ground that he has been tarred and feathered by one of the traps. One of them is definitely a wet bandit because they fell into a tank of water. So, both? But yeah. No, your story just made me think of the fact that Game Masters and Dungeon Masters playing in your games can lead to some ridiculous shenanigans.
That's my thing too. It's like whenever I get into combat, no matter what character, my brain immediately goes into, okay, here's how many things do I have at my disposal? How many things would they have at their disposal? What's the best way I can get into this without taking damage? And I'm like going through all the different move here, move here, move here, move here. And it's like, okay, how do I do this? But as if my character would. It's like I have all the plans and know how everything works. But my character's a knucklehead. How am I gonna play this off?
Oh, that whippersnapper.
Yeah. And like the shield thing was completely in character for my Tabaxi because they have a ridiculous sense of self-preservation. So, like, every tactic that they have ever used is, how can I minimize my risk while dealing the maximum damage to my enemies?
Very good.
Involving such things as running up and down the rock so that I would peek up, fire Eldritch Blast, Ray of Frost, whatever random spell I needed to, and then duck back behind the rock so they couldn't hit me. to the extent
Very
that
good.
I had every other player cracking up because they knew what was going to happen on my turn. Was I run up the rock? Can I see that goblin over there? I can. Firebolt. I run
Yes.
down the rock.
I hide.
As one does.
Yes.
Yeah.
You talking about us about playing as a bandit reminds me. You still owe us like the rest of a lot of campaign with Parker and I and your brother as thieves. Also Terry.
Actually, I do not miss Sean's character at all. His character made me really upset.
Honestly, the fact that Terry's character was named Voltron made his character upset me too.
I forgot about the fact
No,
that he
so-
named his character Voltron.
And isn't Sean's like John Johnson or something?
Yep, it sure
Probably.
was. It was John Johnson, and he had his own religion where he was God, or something like that. He was trying to evangelize people.
Yes.
And-
He
He
did
worshipped
in
a
fact
horse
want
or
to
something.
try and become a god.
Wait, hold on. His character sheet.
Sean's?
No, his name was Mike. His name was Mike Michelson.
Mike Michelson.
Oh, that's what it was.
Hey,
Yeah, his
this
character
is the
sheet is
same
from the
guy
Discord chat.
who named his Star Wars character Ringo Supertramp. And what was his Shadowrun character? Oh yeah, McBadass.
Oh,
Naming is not his strong suit. Playing
I mean,
characters that pisses other people off is his strong suit.
Yeah.
He's good at that.
yeah.
I actually kind of like McBadass. For Shadowrun.
Right.
I mean, it fits Shadowrun
Okay,
very
so
well.
yeah. So, is there anything else we wanted to discuss or think about? It's about that time to wrap up.
I say we said
It's a
we'd talk
good
about
time
character
about
stuff.
to wrap up.
We
We
did.
We
did
did that.
Talked
Certainly.
about teleporting momentum. We talked about world building
a little bit.
Yeah.
a
I
little
mean,
bit.
yeah.
I still want to do one of these
You
where
should-
we do nothing but talk about world building.
Yeah.
Yes,
we'll
we
get around
will,
to that.
and hopefully future ones will be longer. But Joey was putzing around with his fucking camera for an hour.
Yeah,
I
don't-
still have
don't-
no
don't-
idea why it wouldn't work.
I'm blaming you solely.
Don't blame him for technological issues.
Like,
It is
It's solely your
100%
fault.
Joey's fault.
I literally had to close half the applications that I'm currently running to do this, to get my camera to show up in Discord, and then open everything back up.
Well, at least it worked.
Yeah.
I have no idea why it took all of that, because it really shouldn't have.
It was a
Yeah.
long road to not very far, but we did it.
And
Yep.
I honestly think there was something else we said we were going to talk about, but it was
It's
probably-
almost
but we can do
2
that next time.
hours ago when I was typing that up. So I don't
It
remember
was
what
our
it is.
preferred game systems. And we'll get
It
around
was
to that.
what?
Preferred game
game
systems,
systems.
and we'll get around to that next time.
Yeah,
Oh, I've only ever played 5th edition, so that won't be one I can weigh in on.
that's all right.
All right, it's fair enough.
That's for next time.
Yeah.
Oh well.
We'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
All right. So long and
Next time I'll have
farewell, gentlemen.
So long,
Yep.
farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
That's
All right.
way excessive.